For several weeks now, there has been a prayer making the rounds among, I want to say, our kind of church folk on social media land, which I've shared with you all a few times in our prayers of the people and in our newsletter. And it's called A Prayer for These Times by Bishop Stephen Charleston, who's a retired Episcopal bishop of Alaska. And he's an elder with the Choctaw Nation as well. And this is the prayer that he's been offering. When they hate, I will love. When they curse, I will bless. When they hurt, I will heal. I am a servant of the light. I am not afraid of darkness. I will carry on with my work as a steward of this earth and all her children. When they divide, I will unite. When they rage, I will calm. When they deny, I will affirm. I will simply be who I am, for that is what Spirit created me to be. Amen. So this prayer is very much in the spirit of Jesus. I'm sure you can hear echoes of what Jesus taught and what Paul's in the spirit of the early communities of Jesus' followers and of the saints through the ages, known and unknown. It's a good prayer for any time and any circumstance. It's a courageous spirit. It's a spirit of integrity. It's clear about the truth of goodness that endures despite all that may rally against it. And to pray in this way may be encouraging. To pray in this way may be inspiring. But more than anything else, I expect that to pray in this way is challenging. And really in any circumstance. Because it sounds nice, but how can you actually live like this? And the key part, I think, is this line, I am not afraid of the darkness. And for us to say this with some truth and some conviction requires us to rely on a power greater than ourselves. And this power is what Jesus embodies. When we look to Jesus' teachings and his example in his life, we find someone who embodies a fearlessness about facing the things that we can call the darkness or the shadow side of human nature. We find someone who embodies what we can call the light of truth and love that relentlessly shines into the shadow side of human nature. In Jesus, we find someone who directs us to fearlessly face not only the darkness of other people's capacity to hate and curse and hurt and divide and rage and deny and neglect, but also our own. We can't meet someone else's sinfulness with courage and truth and love unless we can meet our own that way. And we have no hope of doing any of that without the help of a higher power, right? This is a God help us kind of thing. We need God's help. To grow towards loving others as ourselves, to doing unto others as we'd have them do unto us, I mean, that's what a standard to try to live by. To hold ourselves accountable to. It's easy to hold other people accountable to it. It requires us to grow towards loving God with our whole selves. I mean, last week we heard Jesus also summing up the law and the prophets. To love God with your whole selves and to love others as ourselves. So to grow towards loving God with our whole selves requires us to bring our whole selves into the love God offers us, the love that God offers one and all as a gift of grace. And to bring our whole selves into the love of God requires us to bring our shadows into the light, to let our blind spots be illuminated, which initially may not feel so comfortable. It can feel like a harsh light that illuminates our blind spots. But it's the kind of light, when we're bringing this all to God, that shows itself to be the light of love, the light of mercy, which embraces our shadows along with the other parts of ourselves that are good and noble and beautiful. And this is a transforming experience, and it's something that we can experience once, and we can experience twice, and we need to continue to return to it as part of the practice of our faith. And it gives us the courage and the strength to face not only our own shadows, but the shadows of others, to not fear the darkness, to not fear others' capacity to hate and curse and hurt and divide and rage and deny and neglect, and to meet those shadows with what we can offer of the antidote as best we can. So again, that all sounds nice, but isn't it a little too precious? Well, what's the alternative? And how's that working out? It's always a good question to ask. How is it working out? It's kind of like an addict hitting rock bottom. How's that working out for you? How much unnecessary suffering is enough to say, enough? I need a way out. It may not be glamorous to be sober, but self-destruction, when it comes down to it, is an ugly and painful affair. So in the past few weeks and months and years, really, and maybe centuries, decades, centuries, if you come down to it, but there's been a whole lot of nastiness that's come to the surface. And civility has kind of stripped away in a lot of ways. And a lot of folks have become very reactive in a vicious sort of way. And their blind spots have become distressingly clear, at least to those who have gotten run over by them. And who is this they who's got their blind spots? The interesting thing is that when I say something like this, folks of one political orientation will immediately think about the folks of the opposing political orientation who have been mean to them or to those that they care about. And when someone disrespects or threatens us or those we care about, we see their blind spots pretty clearly. They're catching us in our blind spots. And to add whatever, to whatever real pain there is, there's just folks have been causing a lot of pain for each other. I think we can all agree. And then we have also the forces of just fear, and also the forces of then hate and bitterness that can then imagine monsters in the shadows of others. Monsters can grow in the shadows. And that's how enemies are made. And then, in our righteous indignation, we get to be the good guys who have the Hollywood soundtrack to the movie of our lives as we fight a noble battle against the hordes of evil. And the problem is that this is not really how, thank you for the chuckle, right? That's not how reality really works out, right? When you put it like that, it's just not how things actually play out with real human beings in the world as it is. We're all pretty complicated, and we're pretty flawed, and we can set each other off. And this is why wars bring out the worst in both sides, because all people are capable of both great humanity and great depravity. And when we deny the humanity of our enemy, that brings out our own depravity, making enemies of each other. And the real hard thing is that civil wars are the worst kind of wars. Because it takes more to try to make an enemy of your neighbor. So now, enemy making is not a very Christian way of going about things. And that may be surprising to hear for how self-righteous and judgmental Christians are famous for being. But the truth is that Jesus challenges us to look in the mirror and to see how our sin is showing, as well as the sin of those we're making into our enemy. And so our prayer must not only be when they hate, I will love, but also at the same time, when we hate, I will love. When we curse, I will bless. When we hurt, I will heal. Now, this doesn't mean that we don't hold others accountable for their bad behavior, especially when that's violent or threatening. And Jesus was clear about that. He was pretty unrelenting in exposing lies and hypocrisy and viciousness. And he came to the defense of those who his people were scapegoating and attacking or using and abusing and neglecting and dismissing and denying and all of that. But he never let anyone get away with not looking inward. Looking inward and outward at the same time to see how we are all suffering from the same condition. We're all in this together. We're all in the same boat. We're all in this together. We are all in this together. In one way or another, to one degree or another, we're all suffering from the same condition. And we're all suffering from this all too human tragedy of sin sickness that can just manifest in different ways. But some bear the brunt of it worse than others. So we can see this sin sickness in our opponents, whoever they are, and we can recognize the suffering it causes. We can also see the sin sickness of our own side, however we understand that, and recognize the suffering that causes. But most importantly is that we see the sin sickness we all share. We all share. We're all in this together. We've all got our blind spots. And that is causing suffering as well. And for whom? For whom? Who's caught in all of our blind spots? Who is getting caught in the blind spot of our society as a whole? Who is being neglected or dismissed or denied or scapegoated or used up and thrown away? So we all need to be free of this, right? We're all in this together. We all share the human condition, which can manifest in some ugly ways, distressing ways. We all need the grace of God. This is another turning of the wheel of the gospel, another round to realize in a fresh way that we all need the grace of God. We all need the truth that can set us free. Because we're better than this. And yet, in some ways, we're not better than this. we need a higher power to help us out of the hole that we can dig for ourselves. Sin is part of who we are, but it's also true that God has created us for something better, and we have that in ourselves as well. And the good news is, when we earnestly seek, we shall find. When we earnestly ask, we shall receive. Jesus shows us the way by the grace of God. And so in this way, we can carry on in the work. We can carry on in our work of sincerely trying to live faithfully as followers of Jesus in our lives. And so for this, I give thanks to God. Thanks be to God.